Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Traders Mind Chat live show. Now, today we're going to be discussing how to identify price trends, whether they are moving up, down, or sideways. So, if you are someone that is new to trading, or maybe you're somebody that's struggling, or maybe you're somebody that just is looking for a fresh perspective, or would like a little bit of a refresher, then this is going to be the live stream for you. Now, before we get into today's topic, if you would take a moment to please hit the like button and drop a comment into the chat, that's going to help blast this out to a lot more people. I appreciate you taking the moment to do that. Let me know, by the way, too, where you're watching this from. I like to always see like where you guys are from: Facebook, Instagram, not Instagram, but YouTube, Share Vision. Let me know where you're at, where you're watching this. Twitter. Anybody on Twitter? But yes, so part of the magic of trend following, part of the thing that makes trend following so profitable is this ability to be able to answer three main questions. So the three main questions that we're going to try to answer today are: number one, how long has price been moving in this direction, whether it be up, down, or sideways? Next, we're going to answer the question of what direction is price moving and on what time frames. It sounds similar to that first question, but it's a little bit different and it's important. And after this presentation, you're going to understand why. And the last question is, in what manner has price been moving, and has it been quiet and smooth, or has it been with loads of ferocity, like we've seen in a number of growth stocks recently? So we're going to aim to answer all those questions in today's live stream. Now, just like every other live stream, this is meant to be super interactive. So as you have questions, go ahead, type them into the chat as we go, and I'll do my best to answer them. So all that said, let's jump into the presentation now. There's really only three ways that markets can move. Markets could move up, down, or sideways. And we're going to define an uptrend as a series of higher highs and higher lows, right? So prices making higher highs and higher lows. We'll take a look at what that actually looks like. For a downtrend, it's going to be a series of lower highs and lower lows, and sideways is kind of a clusterfuck, right? Like it's not moving higher, it's not moving lower. You have lower highs, you have higher lows. It's kind of all over the place. It could be choppy, which it tends to be, or it could be tight and controlled too, which sometimes we'll see on a price chart, particularly of a stock. So those are the three main things that price can do. Now, the way to see and the way to gauge what price might do next, right? So when we're coming to answer this question here, right? Like, how long has price been moving in this direction? That first question. We want to start by zooming out. We want to start by looking at the bigger picture. That helps us gain perspective. So when we're looking at something like this here, and well, when we're looking at something like this, well, what trends do you see? What trends do you see? Go ahead, type into the chat. Tell me, well, what trends do you see on this chart? I'll give you a moment to type it in. See a bunch of trends, right? By the way, looking at a weekly chart, this is a weekly chart. Well, we have some potentially sideways, depending on how long, how you're defining the trend. If it's just a series, right? Like we haven't come up with a clear definition of series yet. So maybe it is an uptrend from here, right? Maybe this is a downtrend This seems like it's clearly a downtrend, but that could also be an uptrend. It could be a variety of things, right? Ryan's in the house. Ryan's watching this on Facebook. So sideways and up. Yeah. Yeah, I could see that, right? So sideways and up moving this way over here, sideways and up. Um, so part of what we want to try to figure out too is for what duration, right? Well, what duration are we looking at? Um, there's a variety of trends that we might be able to see on here, right? So there's some sideways trends, right? So just going based off our first definition of a series of lower highs, higher lows, just kind of like moving, not really making a whole lot of progress, right? Between those 2 points there. Uh, Price hasn't made a higher high or a higher low yet. If we're looking at, say, from that point to up there, prices making a series of higher highs and higher lows, right? Yeah, you might also zoom in too, right? And say like, oh, well, what about here? Here, price made a lower high and a lower low. Is that a downtrend? See that, like, those are some of the nuances. Those are some of the things that I think trip a lot of people up. Let me know if that's one of the things that you find confusing too, right? Like, well, part of part of putting together presentations like this, right? Like I'm thinking through in my mind, like, well, how do I see an uptrend? How do I see something that's sideways, and try to display that as best I can. But even in going through something like this, and trying to think of the beginner's mindset, well, what is exactly an uptrend? What is a series of higher highs and higher lows? Coming up with clearer definitions for things like that, I think, can be very helpful, at least as a guide, because uh, something else too in trading, right, is that if we are a little too rigid, then that's where things start to break a little bit. Like there's definitely a lot of both art and science in this. So I appreciate the questions. I keep on firing them in. That's going to help. So over here, right, like this section up here, right? Like, yes, you made some some lower lows, you made a couple of higher highs, but it's still basically moving sideways in that area, not a ton of progress. And then you have this over here, right? Like that. That's uh, hard to argue with this being a downtrend right there. And then um, back over here, we start to move sideways for a couple of weeks, where you could start to make an argument that, hey, we haven't pushed lower, we haven't quite continued higher. And then um, over here in this section, we start to turn back up. Question or comment from Ryan. Ryan says, my mind makes me think the lower highs and lower lows were a blip, starting making higher highs and higher lows again. Yeah, so that's interesting too, right? So um, for if you are, I'd say that, yeah, if you are a little bit more advanced, like let's say that you've at least read a couple of books on the subject. You know what charts are. I'm assuming that most of you watching this are closer to that point, right? Like you found a live stream about trading, so yeah, there's definitely some interest there. You've probably seen some charts before. Um, Part of what's important about identifying something as an uptrend, sideways, a downtrend, one of the most important things is that you are consistent with yourself, right? Like forget about what my definition is, or what I have to say, or what somebody else on the internet has to say. Well, what the somebody that you follow and respect, right? Like those are great places to learn from, open your mind, gain some perspective. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to what our beliefs are. And so that's why it's important to come up with what is going to be your definition and trying to follow that. And you can leave a little bit of wiggle room too in your definitions. Very important. Like that the people that I've coached, like they've made the most progress in doing that part. Like, well, once you get the idea that okay, I need to start to customize, and you're making this kind of list for yourself, then that's the thing that's really helping you make the most progress, the fastest progress. Great stuff, Ryan. All right, so we have basics, right? That this is a basic, so we'll stick to some of the basics. So looking at this, this is sideways. This is an uptrend, making a series of higher highs, higher lows. Then it starts to drift sideways over here. Then your downtrend, right? Like you're undercutting the recent lows from over here, right? So that's starting a downtrend, and then that downtrend is continuing. So if I were to think of it from a very basic perspective, I would say that um, you would to have a trend, you would want to have at least, I'd say maybe 4 or 5 price bars, and then from there, right, like start to see like is it making a series of higher highs, higher lows, and then if something gets undercut dramatically like this, right? So you're moving 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sideways trend, and then that gets undercut, then that right there starts your downtrend, right? So you don't have to wait for this to be 5 bars long to say, yep, downtrend. Let me know if that makes sense. We could always come back to it. Now, one of the things in this context here, well, with trend identification, well, we want to start to think about the different stories that are being told. If you're familiar or if you saw any of the prior live streams that we've done, so we're doing a whole series of live streams on the basics. And part of the theme of these or that we're using is that there's stories being told by the market, and price is a main character, volume is a pretty strong supporting character, and together they're telling the story of hope, fear, greed. Which way is price moving? And so when we're looking at this, right? And so the way that we get to see the story being told, right, is to try to read the story from the beginning, right? Like so when I say from the beginning, I don't mean going back to uh the dawn of time or when the market first opened, right? Like so I don't mean that you have to go back to 1890 and then start tracking the charts from back there per se. Interesting study, but as far as the story that's being told right now, a mistake that I see happen frequently with traders is that to find out well which way price is moving, they'll just jump right here, right? Or which way is price moving right now, right? And just hyper focus on this bar. Maybe they're looking 1 or 2 bars back, but that's about it, right? To really get into the story that the market is telling, to really get into the meat of the psychology of it, you want to go back a ways, right? You want to go back over here. And this is a weekly chart. So, well, what are we looking at over here? Well, we're looking at a few months worth of price action here. So spend a little bit of time, like go back through this and see, like, oh, well, price is near its highs, right? And it's moving up, right? Over here, volume is heavy, right? Then price is stalling a little bit, right? It closed tightly. Volume was elevated. Uh, some of these terms should hopefully make sense to you. If they don't, go ahead, like put it into the chat. Like we all start somewhere. They didn't all make sense to me when I first started, so let me know. But these are things that we did mention too on some of the prior live streams. So again, like the content's all there. Like check it out. Like this stuff is really good. But yeah, like it's telling us a story, and the price is moving up. Now price is moving up on a little bit lower volume. You can see like how volume is kind of like starting to dry up as it's making these new highs, and then all of a sudden prices coming back in on heavier volume, right? And then prices coming back up, volume is a bit lighter, then selling off, then you get several up weeks in a row. I mean, almost similar to price action that we're seeing now. Isn't that interesting? And then prices moving up, right? You come over here, right? Price moved up, but it's almost like it's stalling a little bit, right? Because price moved up, it was on heavier volume, but if we're looking at that one individual price bar, it's pretty small, right? So that's a sign that there's a lot of activity around that point, but there's little movement. Bulls ultimately won. Then you continue higher, and then all of a sudden you're getting some heavier volume to the downside, right? That's a pretty big change between here and what you're seeing over here. And then all of a sudden the market gets walloped, and there's a major shift to the downside. And part of what we see too when the bears tend to really gain control, like they did here, the moves to the downside to be pretty swift. So it pays to pay attention to the full story of how you get to where you are. And then when you are back here, right, and prices already sold off, rather than being over here and starting to think, oh yeah, well, like that's it. The market is, this is a dead cat bounce. Let's say like that's another term where the price falls and then it bounces and then it just flops right over. You know, I don't come up with these names. Like these names were made like aeons ago. But looking at something like that, people might say, oh, well, you know what? Like price here is rallying. It's on significantly lower volume. It's going to roll over. Well, what happened? Right, this is May, uh, April and May of 2020. We know what happened, right? Price ran to one of the probably the biggest rally that you've seen in your lifetime. So it pays to pay attention to the fuller story, right? Price action on an index is one part of it, but if you understand price action on an index, this just happens to be an example, you could take that and apply it to anything that you're trading, right? You could apply it to stocks. You could even take this and apply it to crypto. You could apply it to forex. You could apply it to whatever. If you understand price action, if you understand trends, that's something that's universal. That's why this is so important. Um, yeah, and price did gap a little bit on that day too, or that week, I should say. And so definitely some of the bars are bigger and some of the bars on this are smaller. Um, and so as price evolves, right? Well, what does it tell us about the market's mood? Right? I like to call this uh, market's mood. Like some people call it the current condition of the market. Some people call it the market's health. I like to call it the market's mood. Right? Like it's more psychological. Right? Like if the market is falling like this, I wouldn't say that it's unhealthy, right? Like, who's to say like what's healthy versus well, what's not healthy? But you could understand that the mood is selling, that the mood is fearful, right? That it's being sold off with a level of ferocity. That this sell-off is quite different than this sell-off over here. You could tell too, like by where prices falling to, what levels uh, is price breaking, right? Like so, like this bar, for example, in 1 week, it yes, it gapped down. It also undercut these lows and those lows, and even these lows back here. Did that in one fell swoop, so you could tell that that's a pretty dramatic shift in the story. Let's talk about tight and controlled versus wide and loose price action. When you have tight and controlled price action, there is relative calm amongst buyers and sellers. Kind of like a sunset cruise, right? Like if you're on this sailboat, you're in the middle of Hawaii. It's nice, calm waters. That's what tight and controlled price action is. But on the other hand, when things start to get wide and loose, that's when emotion is going through the roof, right? On both sides. There's lots of turbulence. It's stormy weather. Just like it's like there's hurricanes appearing all over the place. If you're in a sailboat, like you're getting bashed all around. Like that's basically what it's like too in the market when you see tight and controlled price action versus wide and loose. Like it's just like uh, calm weather versus stormy weather. And so tight and controlled versus wide and loose. When price contracts in this way, it gives us a range to trade against, right? Like that's one of the reasons why we want to pay attention to price action and trends. And is it tight and controlled or wide and loose? The tighter the range, the better. Right? Because let me skip ahead a little bit. Yeah, when Tice is bright, the action yields bigger potential reward versus smaller risk. So, for example, right, you're looking at this chart over here, and the difference between this whole section here, this whole section is sideways action, right? Are we all on board with that? That whole section there could be seen as sideways action if we were to draw a box around this. Actually, can I draw a box around it? I think I might be able to. Yeah, look at this, right? Not the straightest line, but we'll take it, right? So looking at that, that's sideways action, right? But what happens if you're buying this versus you're buying over here, right? You're trying to buy this, right? Like, so let's say you're trying to buy this right here versus you're trying to buy this right here. Well, two things, right? Like this one ended up being a better trend, but from back here, if you were to buy this breakout, right? So now we're talking a slightly more advanced tactical strategy where you would be trying to trade a breakout. So if you were to buy this, right? Like, so let's say you're a buyer right here and you say, okay, the price is starting to come out of this little range down here. And if price breaks out of that, then I'm going to use a trend following strategy, right? And this should continue the trend moving up. And I'm going to sell if that trend stops. And the way that I'm going to say that this trend stops is if price falls back into this and breaks through over here. Right? That's going to be what we're going to say. You notice how this is a bit wider than, say, this over here? Everybody see that? That's one of the things where as price tightens up, it gives us better opportunity. That it's giving us a better reward to risk. Where if you are entering over here and your stop is over there, you could uh, you could buy with much bigger size and risk the same amount than if you bought back here, right? Because the distance between your entry price and your stop loss is much smaller over here than it is over there. Does that make sense to everybody? This is good stuff. So when it comes to price action, there really is no crystal ball. Price can move further and for far longer than anyone ever expects. So the key for us then is to not expect, but to, again, follow along with the story. Prepare yourself for which way the story might be able to go. Think through different scenarios, right? And then that's going to be able to tell you that most of the time, like you just need to be prepared in case if price moves suddenly against you. You don't need to forecast what price is going to do in the next several days, several weeks, several months. Just follow along with the story, and you'll be more than well prepared to be able to trade ahead. And you know what? The more that you are like for the people that end up forecasting too far or attempt to forecast too far, you end up becoming fearful of what may happen, and it takes you out of the present moment of what actually is happening, where uh, what could be an opportunity all of a sudden looks like a threat. We want to gauge potential possibilities and probabilities. That's a lot of what trend following does for us. And yeah, always trade what's in front of you. So we could go through some live examples now, but the way that you are going to get better at all this, it's they're going to be more than just sitting here on the live stream. The way that you're going to get better is by taking the time and actually going out and practicing some of this on your own. Now, if you are on my Twitter feed, yeah, I think I just posted it to Twitter. There is a 60% off coupon code, or not even a coupon code. I think TradingView is just giving 60% off right now for Black Friday. Go check that out, right? Like that's like my preferred trading service. The reason why is because they give you some pretty cool features where you could go back in time and replay charts bar by bar and identify some of these trends. So yeah, what I would encourage you to do, like after this live stream is over, would be to even go back and rewatch some of this stuff, pause it, make more notes, and then start practicing on your own, right? And start advancing these charts one by one. Do this on a bunch of them. Do it on at least 20 of them of the major indices, and then you could you be at a point too where you've done this on the major indexes. Then you could go and apply it to stocks too, and you're going to see that wow, what I just spent a half an hour learning in this live stream, yes, I could apply it to the major indices. Yes, it's going to help me identify market mood, but it's also going to help me trade individual stocks better. If I'm looking into forex, or maybe I'm a forex guy that came here. If you are, thanks for joining. Let me know. But yeah, like it's giving you all these tools to be able to trade other asset classes like that. This is solid foundational stuff. So all that stuff said, let me stop sharing that screen for a moment and I'll pull this other thing over here and let me know what questions you guys have. If you have any questions about anything that we've said thus far, please let me know. And also, if you haven't done so already, make sure that you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, drop some comments into the comments. But yeah, let me come over here and share this other screen. We could see what price is doing today. Yeah, so I'm doing that. Keep on putting in any other questions that you have. So taking what we've learned so far, right? And here's a bigger chart of the S&P. Which way is price moving? Is price moving up, down, or sideways? This is the S&P. Would you say the price is moving up, down, or sideways? Kind of interesting, right? We have a few more uh, things on the chart over here, but basic price action, which way do you think it's moving, up, down, or sideways? Well, I'll tell you my thoughts. I'll tell you my thoughts. Um, First thing that I would do is take a look at this right here. Right, so just going to draw a little box around this and look at all this as sideways action. All right, going back here. And the reason why is because in this area, price failed to make a higher high. You could say that, yes, it did push higher on this day here. Well, what is that? That's Friday of last week. It attempted to push higher on Monday of this week, yesterday, and now it's back inside the box. It attempted to push higher, but it ultimately got pushed back lower, right? So I would look at this and count all that as sideways. Like it hasn't quite continued its uptrend yet. Like it's still there. It still has potential, but it hasn't quite done it yet. And some of the price action that we're seeing in a few stocks too look a little hairy. If you are trading a growth stock, for example, this is a Sun, right? This is a Sun. Here's some other stocks that I was trading earlier. I ended up closing out all my short-term positions. Yeah, here's some of them from earlier. Okay, well, let's go over to a daily chart. Yeah, this broke out, started to pull back, got rid of this. This is another one that broke out yesterday. Glad to have sold out of that one. Yeah, here's another one. Right? Like so the character of the market has begun to change. Some longer term trades, right? Like this is Tesla. Tesla is a trade that I started way back here. Had this great move and now it's pulling back. But even this, right? And so this too, your perspective on uh or your intention with a trade matters for a lot, right? So for example, looking at Tesla, you might look at this and say, oh, that's bearish. It had this big run up. Now it's pulling back. It part of this too, right? Like it was moving up, right? That's an uptrend. Then you could look at this and call that a downtrend, but this whole section right there is sideways for now, right? So if we take another little box and draw a box around this, that's sideways. And if you are a shorter term swing trader, you'd probably be selling this into strength, right? Like the 90% move, yeah, sell something into strength. But if you are longer term, and for me, this was a longer term trade, you just have some sideways action over here. This is a weekly chart. You have that red line catching up. That's a 10-week moving average. It's a spot that institutions tend to step in and support positions if they're going to continue to support them. So for right now, it's sideways. So your perspective, your time frames matter quite a bit when you're thinking through this stuff, and that's why one of the first things that we were talking about in the beginning is to write down what your definitions of things are going to be. It'll give you a lot more clarity. And something else too is to do that exercise routinely, right? Like to do that at least like once a quarter, right? Like to think through your definitions, so that way you're you're updating, right? Because you're continuously learning. You might even want to do it more often than that. But as you learn, as you grow, you're going to start to see things. You'll be a more evolved version of you, and you'll see things differently next month, in 3 months from now, in 6 months from now. So you will have different definitions for things. Keep it up. Let's see. A couple of questions came in. Ryan says, "How do you pick which stocks?" All right. How do I pick stocks? That's a good question. So there's a few different ways that I go about picking which stocks I want to buy. So, for example, uh, let's talk about winning trade that I just closed out this morning. Um, Trade was AMD, and so we'll go over here because this was a swing trade. And you could see that there's a whole bunch of annotations on here. Don't get scared off by them. The annotations are more for me, like as price progresses. I could turn this off for a moment, just so you could see. So basically, I'm entering over here, and I'm exiting. My last sale was today, where that red line was, and I'll walk you through that. To take that stuff off, make it look a little bit cleaner. So what I saw with this was that price had followed the story, right? So price ran up on heavy volume back here, right? Like, so that there's a lot of demand, a lot of institutional demand coming into this, right? Oh, big interest in this name. And to go back even further, right? So price was moving sideways for a long period of time, right? So from August 2020 all the way until July 2021, about a year, moving sideways. And then you get this kind of volume surge. That's not, you and me doing that buying. That's like whales jumping in and buying the stock. Great. So it runs up and it consolidates for a little while, right? Like, so it consolidates for what, about that's July to October. So July, August, September, October, for another 3 months. Um, there's a couple of different ways to get into this, right? Because if you are thinking that, oh wow, there's big institutions buying this and this is establishing a trend, maybe you're buying it down here as things are starting to turn around. Maybe you're buying that breakout. I happen to miss both of those, but this came on my radar and I saw this pullback over here and I said, yeah, you know what? I think I want to buy that pullback and buy the breakout from that pullback. For a couple of reasons, right? Number one, the institutional demand that of the whole story that we saw before. Another part of it is that, I'm not sure if you saw this down here, but that was earnings, right? So that was likely part of the reason why I was hesitant to buy in this area over here. But now we're past earnings and we're getting this consolidation over here. Call it a handle, call it a flag, call it what you will. It's a little consolidation. But yeah, like, so getting in right around there, you're past earnings. And it was in a very hot industry group. At that time, semiconductors were red hot. NVIDIA at the time was the leader. This was a secondary leader, still a leader in its space, and bought that one. As it runs up, right? So as it runs up, something that I really like to do is to sell into strength, and that's what some of these other markings were, right? So once I make a multiple of what I've risked, I want to take something off the table. I see that as a way that the market is paying me, and it's also from a psychological perspective, it's locking in a win. All right, so I'm able to be a little bit. Uh, it makes playing the rest of the position a bit easier, having already sold a little bit into strength. Um, and then from there, like, as price is progressing, selling a little bit more, selling a little bit more. And then today, I sold the last bit of it because the character was changing, right? So if you notice, zoom in a bit from back here, take this off. Price is holding that thin gray line and that green line, right? You notice that? It's holding both of them. That's the 5 EMA, that's a 10 EMA. Then today, price undercuts both. Maybe it rallies back, but this is the first major change in character that it's had from back here. Really, you could go back even further to back here that it's held both of those for a while. So the character is changing. I have a significant gain in it. I don't, the intention of this trade was to be a swing trade, and for a swing trade, the idea is to lock in gains and turn your portfolio over relatively quickly. So that's what I was doing there. Uh, Other question. Oh, Confluence Trader. Welcome, Confluence Trader. Haven't seen you in a while. Does breakout of a stock fail or fades if benchmark index is moving sideways? Great question. The answer is sometimes, right? Um, Generally speaking, the way that I'll trade a stock is to trade the stock individually, regardless of what the indexes are doing. So, for example, come back over to the indexes. Right, there's my mouse. Okay, so back here, right, the indexes looked absolutely terrible. Right, it was like it was going to potentially roll over. You have heavy volume selling, right? But what I started to see over here too, as price was coming in, I saw a couple of things. I started to see some of what turned out to be some of the leaders, right? Your upstarts, your Asanas, your coins, and those type of stocks setting up in this area. I started to see that, and I also saw that low coincided with prior resistance from way back here. So if I am trading just based off the index and I'm saying that, oh, I want to wait for the index to start to turn around, get back above the 50-day, then I would have missed out on runs like this, right? Like not that, but back here, right? So we're talking about October 5th. So that's right back there. Was able to capture that. We're talking about runs like this, right? So again, October 5th, right? Like, so starting to turn around right back here. And these are significant gains, right? Like, so from back here, that's a move of 30%, right? So missing out on something like that because the market is uh, hasn't turned around yet. But also on the flip side, you take a look at the S&P and you're still spitting distance from all-time highs, but are you really going to hold something like a sun through this? Right? No, it would be very challenging, even if you are long-term, to sit through this. Right? Like to use the same kind of chart markup from before, right? Like even if we're calling this sideways, is still like it's still testing those lows. It actually poked below the low from over here. I think it did. Right. So that low is 98.06. Today's low is 97.53. So it did make a lower low that way too. So I do factor in the overall market conditions. I do like to see what the overall market mood is. There's many factors that I consider when gauging the overall mood of the market, major indices being one of them. Um, the types of setups that are coming out, are they early stage, late stage? Are they of high quality, low quality? Uh, are they plentiful? Are there very few? And then not only that, right? But our lists can become so so useful, right? So here's a bunch of trades that I saw from over the weekend. Didn't take any of these trades that are still here, right? I had a couple of them that I tested from the week. Uh, they each trade this week there were three of them. They ended up being losers on the week. Uh, and so, yeah, like AMD was a winner. There were a few other winners from earlier that were like WSC that was a winner, but the ones from this week, like so, here's WSC. Um, the ones that were taken on Monday, they kind of pop dropped, and it's just like, okay, let me cut these losses. But here's some trades that were on the radar that I didn't take, and it could just from the stocks that are popping up on your radar that you don't take can be such a great key to seeing market health because these could have been ones that you put your hand into the bag, reached out and traded. And for the most part, these are well, like the market's beating them all up, right? Like some of them look decent over the weekend, but many of them are taking a beating. Jeez. Yeah, there's one that's halfway decent, right? Nucor, NUE. SPG is still okay. That's a REIT. Yeah, anything in growth land has been taking a beating. So yes, it's how the major indexes perform is part of it, but it's just one layer to to how I'm gauging market mood. Um, yeah, it's one of those things too that we discuss constantly inside our elite program. So if you're interested in really diving deep into it, definitely check out the elite program. Go to here, I'll pull up the website. So marrowwealth.com. And here is the elite membership up here. Go check that out. And you could learn all about the program here. And uh, take a look at some of the testimonials. But yeah, what else can I say? Oh, well, one other thing too that's worth checking out as well. For those of you that are a little bit newer to trading, that you just want to build community and learn and bounce ideas off of one another, continue the conversation from here, then go to the Traders Mind Chat room. Right, we've got a room now, and it's on StockTwits, and there's actually a deal going on for it right now. If you use code BF50, you'll get a great discount to this room. So go check that out, and I will put that into the chat. Um, Confluence Trader says for the same question, right? So going back to stock failing, uh, for the same question, can I ignore index movement if I trade intraday? I wouldn't ignore any of that. It's how you would use it. So you'll have a much better chance of winning uh, and making progress and not fighting the market, not fighting the tape if you're trading in the direction of the market. So if the market is in a strong trend, right? Like so, for example, back here, right? So between uh, mid-October to beginning of November. That's a very strong trend, right? Price broke out above the 50. It was holding its own 5 EMA for about a month. That's as about as strong of a trend as you can hope for. So it pays then to be aware of those kinds of trends because you want to be trading in that direction. And you also want to be aware of how long has that trend lasted, because as it's continuing to go, right, like we know that it can't hold that level forever, right? So there will be a point where things start to deteriorate, things start to roll over. So it's definitely helpful. I found it to be helpful from that perspective too, when I was day trading, and you could go back and watch the live stream that we did on day trading. I think we did it last week. My days are a little confused, but go back, check that out. Lots of great information in there. Let's see, anything else? Any other questions? Got some good questions coming in today. Appreciate you guys. Again, if you haven't already done so, make sure that you guys hit like and subscribe. That's going to help blast this out to a lot more people. We're doing these live streams 3 days a week. Another great benefit too of being in the Traders Mind Chat room is that you get to request the live streams, right? So if you have a topic that you want to discuss here, we're going to discuss it in there in the room as quickly as possible. But let's say that, hey, let's go super deep on a topic, right? Like the topic for tomorrow's live stream, discussing IPOs and how do you find a good IPO? What are some of the criteria? How do you trade them? That came from this room here. And so that's the topic that we're going to be diving into on tomorrow's live stream. So definitely, you guys go check out that Traders Mind Chat room. It's really fantastic, and it's getting better and better by the day. Yeah, Confluence Trader, you are welcome. Ryan, you are welcome too. And everybody else that's watching, that's here live, appreciate all of you guys. And for everybody that's watching the recording, I appreciate you as well. So let me turn that part off. I'll turn this other thing here, and we'll call it a day. I want to say thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you back here tomorrow for the IPOs live stream. Take care. Much love. Peace out, everybody. Hey, thanks so much for sticking around to the end. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button down below and become a part of the Marrow Wealth community. And make sure that you check out some of the other videos on the channel. They're exactly what you need to see. And leave a comment down below. I read all of them. Leave a comment.